What are your thoughts on the WNBA allowing trans women?
Allow trans women wherever they want to go.
Okay. I have my friend Ruby over here. She just started transitioning about 3 weeks ago with estrogen. She wants to enter the WNBA draft in 2027. You think she can do it?
I thought I was a man my entire life, but after further review, strong look at my personal preferences, it would appear that I am indeed sometimes identifying as a transgender woman.
Are you a trans woman?
Well, I want to make this very clear.
Are you a trans woman?
Listen, Section 13, right? Article 13, Section 1 says if you identify as a woman, then you're allowed to play.
So you are identifying as a woman tonight?
I identify as a woman.
The WNBA trans debate has now reached completely new levels of absurdity. And the league is literally removing people from games just for wearing a shirt featuring the dictionary definition of a woman. And now DL Hughley is sharing his thoughts on all of this, saying you can identify however you choose, but biology doesn't lie. Meanwhile, trans activists are now urging the WNBA to sign trans French player Julie Tétart. Tétart came out as trans in 2021, is 63 and averages 20 rebounds per game. At the same time, those same trans activists are attacking Sophie Cunningham and labeling her transphobic simply because she said she wants to protect women's and girls' sports.
If Sophie Cunningham has no haters, I am dead. Sophie Cunningham is a player in the WNBA and she is transphobic. A few days ago, ESPN posted an interview that they did with Sophie Cunningham in which she talks about protecting women's sports. And here is an excerpt from the interview in which she says, "I love trans." I think if you were not transphobic, that sentence would say, "I love trans people." What does that mean?
All right, let's talk about Sophie Cunningham's supposed crime. Because if you've been following this story through the mainstream media, you'd think she went on some hateful rant. But that's not what actually happened. Here's what Sophie really said. In a July 2026 ESPN interview, she was asked about her thoughts on trans women playing in the WNBA. And here's exactly what she said. "I got a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans people. And I'm like, I never once said that. I think that I am here to extend love, but I also think that with love comes truth, being honest, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to compete against biological men." So she literally never said anything hateful about trans women. And yet trans activists launched this vicious campaign against her, sending her death threats, explicit messages, and even stalking her in real life. She even had to cancel her plans to buy a home in Florida after a stalker discovered her location. However, Sophie didn't back down. In fact, she stood firmly by her position and said she would continue advocating for the safety of women and girls. Asterisk.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
And what's wild is that the majority of people agree with Sophie, but those in the public eye are simply too afraid to speak out. But not DL Hughley. Here's what he had to say about this entire debate involving men who want to identify as women.
Now we live in a country where a man could say, "Now I'm a woman." Now I'm a woman. And we will call you by your name as a woman. But that doesn't mean that a doctor ain't gonna call you until you need a prostate examination. Now, you can wear a sundress when you go. Yeah. You still getting the same thing I'm getting. So happy anniversary, I guess. I don't know. And now you can say you're a thing and you're that. Yeah. And you have to for now. I'm a white man trapped in this black man's body. Yeah. My name is Chad. Yeah. Now that ain't gonna work good for the police. Wait, I'm a white man. Well, both of y'all get out.
Now, when it comes to basketball players, Sophie Cunningham received support from only a small handful of them. One of them was Kyle Kosma, who called out people for attacking Sophie and asked, what exactly was transphobic about her comment? She said she wants to protect women and young girls in sports and believes they should not have to compete against biological men. Yeah, let's go ahead and discipline her. So even Kosma can see it. It's not rocket science. It's common sense. But then you have Andis Kaner and Royce White. And that's where this whole situation goes completely off the rails. Now, the first thing you need to remember is that Article 13 of the WNBA's own rule book states, and I quote, Only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. Sounds straightforward, right? But here's the messed up part. They never define what they mean by woman. This rule book contains over 400 pages, and it defines every single word from rookie to veteran to player contract to regular season. Every single term you could possibly imagine is defined in exhausting legal detail except one, the word woman. So the league has an eligibility rule stating only women can play, but they refuse to define what a woman is. And that brings me to Andis Kaner and Royce White. Earlier this month, Andis and Royce declared themselves eligible for the 2027 WNBA draft, claiming they now identify as women. They argued that since the WNBA's rulebook only says that players who are women are eligible, and the league has no specific policy regarding transgender athletes, they were simply following the rules.
Are you a trans woman?
Well, I want to make this very clear.
Are you a
statement.
trans woman?
Listen, Section 13, right? Article 13, Section 1 says if you identify as a woman, then you're allowed to play.
So you are identifying as woman tonight?
I identify as a woman. Sure, yes.
Okay.
So I can play.
But they're never going to let you play.
Why not? I mean, that's the rule. That's the rule that they put, and I'm just following the rules. If they ever come out and say, "Okay, we are changing the rules," I respect their decision. I will, follow the rules. But right now, if you identify as a woman, you're allowed to play, and I am identifying as a woman, and I am actually allowed to play.
And then Royce White took the trolling even further, saying he identifies as someone who sometimes identifies as a woman specifically for the purpose of playing basketball. Asterisk, asterisk.
I'm just having a blast in my feminine era. I never thought that I was a woman. I've always trusted the science, and I thought I was a man my entire life. But after further review, strong look at my personal preferences, it would appear that I am indeed sometimes identifying as a transgender woman, and I think it's only fair I get a chance to play with some of my queens here in the twilight of my career, my athletic prime. It's just astounding that the WNBA can't define the W in the name. And I think we're going through a very necessary conversation about who's actually eligible to play in some of these professional sports leagues, I guess on both sides of the gender spectrum. My goal is to help elevate the WNBA. I think the ticket prices and the attendance, will soar. I think the audience, the live audience will increase. And I think ultimately it's good for the game. It's going to help evolve the game.
Royce even started wearing a wig and really leaned into the character. He even managed to convince CNN to interview him, but then they canceled at the last minute.
I had to do an interview with CNN at 5 p.m. She messaged me and said, "We're canceling the interview. We have other news." And I just, for the life of me, they're not giving black women a voice.
Now, are Ennis and Royce trolling and rage baiting?
Now, are Royce trolling and rage baiting? Absolutely. Is it a little immature? Probably so. But at the same time, they really managed to expose what they see as the hypocrisy of the WNBA. In fact, the WNBA has now released a statement saying Andis and Royce are not eligible for the 2027 draft because their declarations are merely publicity stunts. The statement said the league refuses to give oxygen to efforts meant to mock the league or use this issue to demean or marginalize others. So the league is saying these two men who claim they identify as women do not meet the eligibility standard. So, why won't they explain what that standard actually is? Does the WNBA define woman based on biology? So they should make that clear. On the other hand, if they believe simply saying you identify as a woman is enough, then they should include that in their rulebook. But they won't, because saying anything would force them to choose a side. And choosing a side would expose the hypocrisy. And things are getting more ridiculous every day, to the point where this entire trans issue has completely hijacked the conversation around women's basketball. In case you missed it, there was recently another incident connected to this debate when Kaner showed up courtside at a Chicago Sky vs. Indiana Fever game. He was sitting along the baseline wearing a black t-shirt that read woman, noun, adult human female. So just a simple dictionary definition. But then Sky guard Natasha Cloud, who is very pro-trans and has been one of the loudest voices against Sophie Cunningham, confronted him and started yelling and pointing at him during a timeout. Andis then stood up with his arms out, took one step toward the court, and security immediately moved in and removed him from the arena. So after the game, Andis went on X and wrote, "I just got kicked out of a WNBA game for supporting women. Let that sink in, America." As for the WNBA's response, they obviously sided with Natasha Cloud. And Sky coach Tyler Marsh said Natasha is someone who protects our team and protects people who need to be protected. But protected from what? Natasha was the one who instigated that incident. She rushed toward Enes Kanter, cussing him out and needing to be held back by her teammates. Meanwhile, Andis was simply wearing a shirt. Charlemagne the God called him out on the Breakfast Club and said Kanter doesn't really care about protecting women. He just wants to be the main character.
You've lost the plot, all right? He says he's doing all of this because he wants to protect women. Yeah, so you go into a space built around women, a league played by women, a workplace where women are doing their jobs, and you create a situation where one of the women playing basketball ends up arguing with you. And now the headline coming out of the game isn't about the women's basketball game. It's about you, Enes Kanter freedom. Okay, how did protecting women become making yourself the main character in women's spaces?
Now look, you can agree with Charlemagne about Andis and still have enough common sense to recognize that the WNBA is being extremely hypocritical about this entire situation. And more importantly, they're the ones who continue failing women and girls. And then there's the whole science side. Evidence from evolutionary biology shows that the physical differences between males and females are not merely superficial. And this is not a matter of social construction. It's a fundamental biological principle that exists across species. First of all, the physical advantages males develop are well documented throughout scientific literature. Male puberty, which is driven by testosterone, causes lasting increases in muscle mass, strength, speed, and endurance. And these are significant differences that impact athletic performance. This is why the performance gap between elite males and females remains consistent. Studies have found that women's world record times are roughly 10% slower than men's records across a broad range of sports. For example, sprinter Allyson Felix, one of the most decorated female athletes in history, had a lifetime best 400-meter time that was beaten by nearly 300 high school boys in 2018. Now, something that gets mentioned a lot by trans activists is hormone therapy. They claim trans women who undergo hormone therapy no longer retain those male physical advantages. But that's simply not what the current science shows. Studies indicate that some effects of male puberty, such as bone size and structure, cannot be reversed once they have developed. Also, increases in lung size and heart size are not fully reversed through testosterone suppression. Testosterone suppression can reduce muscle mass and strength to a certain degree, but the evidence suggests that reduction does not completely eliminate the advantage. Muscle size and strength in trans women can remain greater than what would be expected in a typical female, even when matched for body height or mass. Now let me show you what this means with a real-life example. When Leah Thomas was a male swimmer named William Thomas, he ranked 554th in the men's 200-yard freestyle. But after transitioning and competing as a woman, Leah tied for 5th place at the Women's NCAA Championship, and her 500-yard freestyle ranking went from 65th in men's competition to a national title in women's competition. So Leah went through hormone therapy and testosterone suppression. But the reduction in testosterone did not remove her biological advantage. Again, this is simply science, and it has nothing to do with how someone chooses to identify. But here we are now, and the WNBA still refuses to define what a woman is. When they were asked what criteria they used to determine that Enes Kanter and Royce White were ineligible, they refused to respond. When they were asked whether the league would publish written guidance before the draft, again no answer. But fans have had enough of this mess, and now they're saying everyone should boycott the WNBA and stop watching entirely until they either remove the W from their name or clearly state what that W actually stands for. But I want to know what you think about this entire controversy. Are you taking sides, or are you confused about why this is even being debated? How do you feel about Enes Kanter and Royce White's antics? And what about DL Hughley's comments on men who identify as women? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comments section, and I'll catch you in the next one.